Our next question is for Jose. Jose, one of our participants would like to know if the individuals in your study who had a strong self-esteem, um, were there any common factors which contributed to their self-esteem, for example, family environment or specific activities?
I love the question. Actually, in my study, the way we did it, we did not so much measure self-esteem as we manipulated it temporarily, as I said, by delivering a self-esteem challenge. Actually, I feel kind of compelled to mention right now that we extensively debrief our participants and make sure that they feel well when they leave our lab. We actually have data on that too. But so to answer your question, however, you may want to look into the research of Josie Geller. Josie is in BC, and she developed an instrument that looks at the different dimensions from which people derive self-esteem. And actually, these dimensions are self-defined. So people draw a pie, and they put pieces of the pie of different sizes to represent what they derive their self-esteem from. What we know from her research is that people with higher levels of eating disorder behavior or attitude derive a lot more of their self-esteem um, from their appearance and their body size than people who are lower on these eating disorder attitudes. In my lab, what we do is that we give negative feedback to people on an intellectual task. So it really has nothing to do with their appearance. And we see whether that has an impact on what they will say about their appearance, how they will react to the thin media, and what they eat. And as I said before, we find that combine the self-esteem threat with um, exposure to the thin media, this is where when we find that less actually that women than other women who are equally exposed to the thin media but did not receive the self-esteem threat.
Thank you so much, Jose. Our next question is actually for any one of the panelists. The comment is that recent meta-analysis of girls with greater self-esteem and resilience to a number of noxious influences um, tend to have feminist outlooks. Can anyone speak more concretely to this as if it impacts body image and self-esteem?
I haven't seen that research, but it jives with other research that I've heard of regarding women with, or girls, young women with a feminist outlook. If women feel empowered, if they have a strong sense of the importance of equality, that is already putting their focus and interest on something other than their appearance, because feminists have led the way over decades of encouraging society not to value women primarily on the basis of how we look. And so if somebody is already identifying with the feminist sensibility, it makes sense to me that they would have greater resilience, that they would have more invested in their ability to act, in their ability to use their intellect to express power in the world, other than through sort of traditional means of attracting positive attention for their looks.
Yes, I'm going to comment also briefly. I haven't seen this as a meta-analysis myself. I'd love to have the reference for it actually. But one thing that I want to draw everybody's attention to is I think that these kinds of results have to be interpreted carefully because, for example, for women who define themselves as feminists, there would be a very high kind of self-presentational element um, and possibly bias into reporting feeling a certain way. And women may feel, not just women, participants in general, but now we're talking about women, may feel compelled to report report attitudes toward their appearance that are consistent with what else they're saying about themselves. So if they say that they're a feminist, this can kind of influence how they would report that themselves. I'm not saying that people are not authentic. It's more kind of a need for consistency. That's why I think that it's so important and so interesting to actually have behavioral measures, to then move on to behavioral indicators and see if those behavioral indicators line up with what people say about themselves. So for example, if people with feminist attitudes say, report verbally things that lead us to think that they're less affected by the media, I would also want to see how they behave. Um, I think that people now are becoming very media savvy, and what we find in the lab is that often our participants seem to know what to say, but they go a little bit underground in terms of how they really feel, and that's why those behavioral indicators are so important. There's a lot of awareness now building about the negative impact of the media, and often people know that in line with that new awareness, this is what is the right thing to say, but in their heart might feel differently, and that I think can actually increase the conflict for rather than really being helpful.
Thank you for that response, both Jose and Sherry. The next question is for Janet. Janet, for the DOVE campaign, have you done any content analysis, discourse analysis, or any template analysis for studying the online discussion forums on the DOVE Self-Esteem Fund site?
Not personally, no. They exist, those forums are all around the world, and certainly we read them with great regularity. And in general, it's mostly women who write, though kids also. And they're very grateful that there is a place for this conversation to take place that feels comfortable and safe and supportive, that's also quite public, and there's, because among the DOVE offerings are these self-esteem tools, a lot of which have been used in schools and by mothers and brownie leaders and people who deal with young people who have eating disorders. There's a lot of engagement with the things that DOVE offers, and mothers in particular feel like they're being given tools that help them help their kids. So analysis, scientific research type analysis, me not personally, maybe various people within the DOVE organization have done that, but I certainly read a lot of the dialogue, and so women seem to be making a lot of use of what's on offer through the site, as I say, also teachers and therapists.
Thank you, Janet.